Hello, everyone. A warm welcome to Turning Towards Life. This is Lizzie and Justin from Thirdspace, and we are here with another source to put in between us and find our way into the conversation. We have just completed season 2 of Turning Towards Life Live, which is our opportunity that we've created for everyone to come and join us in the conversation. So what that means is that every time we gather on a monthly basis. And each time we gather, we do this thing, but with one another. So we have a source between us. We are online, we go into breakout rooms, and we create relationship and wondering and conversation and learn how to express ourselves about the thing that we are intending to talk about by having a source between us. And so far, we've had 2 seasons, Justin, and it's been extraordinary. And the kind of end checkouts that we've just experienced of what it's been like have been really beautiful. And if you sign up to the weekly email, we talk about it there. You can also look at wearethirdSpace.org and receive our newsletter, and we talk about it there as well. And you can go to turningtowards.life and just sign up to join us. We would love to have you. There's a new season starting in September, which is not very far away because we're the 23rd of August, 2026 now. And we would love to have you with us. We have a wonderful source from Justin that he found on the London Tube recently. And we're going to have that and hold that between us for this particular episode of Turning Towards Life. And as usual, if you want to email us, tell us what it's like to be in this with us. We would love to hear from you. And you can email us at hello@turningtowards.life. And we always reply. We always are overjoyed to hear from you. And we want to encourage you, if you've been hesitating or wondering whether you should or you shouldn't, today is the day. Please email us. We love hearing from you.
Thank you, Lizzie. Yes, actually, turningtowards.life is the place to go for everything, because you can support us there, you can email us there, you can find out about Turning Towards Life Live and sign up there. You can see and listen to every single one of the 460-something conversations that have been part of Turning Towards Life over this nearly 9 years. So I think it's a wonderful resource, turningtowards.life. And you might want to go there now whilst you're listening, or pause, or you might want to go there at the end. And as you said, Lizzie, it's always wonderful to hear from people. And I wanted to add, if you've got any questions, if you think you might want to join Turning Towards Life Live, which really has been excellent and very exciting to begin a new season on the 16th of September, if you've got questions or you're wondering about it, or you're wondering what it might be like to join us, you can just message us there and we'll very happily respond to that too. So this week's source, for those of you who don't live in London, there is a fantastic project which has been going for maybe 25 years or something, which is called Poems on the Underground. And when you get on a tube train, every now and again, in the place where it's normally filled with advertisements for various things, in that place, sometimes you'll come across a poem, which I think is the most excellent thing. And very often the poems are deep and moving and meaningful. And one of the things I love about them, Lizzie, that often makes them excellent sources for our conversation, is whoever curates them and whoever chooses them doesn't choose always the most obvious things. It's not like you read it and go, yeah, I get that. Very often there's an invitation in the poem to something deeper. It really is a door opening or a provocation to go, I wonder about this. What on earth might this be? So I very often keep my eye out on the tube for poems that can be sources for Turning Towards Life. And this one, A Bunch of Consolation by Maura Dooley, which all of you who are with us, you can find in the show notes for the podcast, on the turningtowards.life website, on the webpage there, in the notes for YouTube, in all of those places, in the weekly email. This poem, A Bunch of Consolation, resonated very strongly, Lizzie, for me, with the conversation that you and I have been in over these recent weeks, where we have both in our lives been in the midst of losses of people who we really care about and who cared about us. And seemed to me that Maura was opening a new doorway into that conversation, and it's timely for you and I to be in that. So we'll do what we ordinarily do. I'll read it, and then Lizzie, you'll read it, and then we will open into conversation and wondering together a mutual, spacious, unhurried inquiry, and we'll see where this goes. So this is a bunch of Consolation by Maura Dooley. You think they'll always be there, the ones who always have been. They showed you the way, not their way, but how to find your own, and what to say. Sweeping the path of leaves or snow. But then they leave. They go before you were ready. How could you ever be ready? To wondering, what have you learned exactly? To love, to speak up, to hold steady. Hold steady.
A bunch of Consolation by Maura Dooley. You think they'll always be there, the ones who always have been. They showed you the way, not their way, but how to find your own, and what to say. Sweeping the path of leaves or snow. But then they leave, they go, before you were ready. How could you ever be ready? To wondering, what have you learned exactly? To love, to speak up, to hold steady. Hold steady.
There is so much to talk about in this poem. And I want to hold two threads, Lizzie, as I'm beginning, that have touched me, particularly this morning, reading and then hearing you read. They're suddenly coming forward very strongly. So the one thread is, you think they'll always be there, the ones who've always been. And I want to just, I'm not sure I'm going to pull on this thread strongly yet, but I just want to name this. That there is something incredibly tender, precious, and difficult in recognizing that we very often feel like the ones who always have been will always be here. It's sort of like a sort of taken for granted background at the same time that we know, because we're humans, it's one of the great burdens that humans carry, is that we know that everybody will go. And we don't necessarily want to look at it. We don't necessarily want to face it. And yet we also at the same time know it's true. And so this first part of the thread that I feel like I'm sort of holding in one hand is, my goodness, it is the case that very often I act as if the ones who have always been here will always be here. And I already, as I'm saying this, start to think about how would I be different? How would I be different towards you now, Lizzie? How would I be different towards my parents, both of whom are still alive? How would I be different towards my auntie Tricia, who died just a few weeks ago? If I could hold more fully and truthfully each time I look at them and speak to them, the understanding is that they won't always be here, and that today or tomorrow might be the day that they're not. So that's sort of thread one. I wanted to hold that, but I wanted to hold it with thread two that I'm going to hold in my right hand, which is this very almost last pair of lines where Maura Dooley says to wonder, what have you learned exactly? What have you learned exactly? And I think it's the most brilliant question that we can start to ask ourselves is, what is it that the people who matter in my life and the people who I don't yet know that matter, because we never know in what way a person that we meet as we cross the street or in the shop or on a walk how they might matter, to wonder, what are they teaching me? How are they sweeping the path of leaves or snow for me before they leave? And I'm thinking that in the light of the first question, this waking up to, paying attention to, we'll lose everybody, really asks of us the second question, which is not to treat the presence of any other person in our lives, not to take it for granted, and not to reduce them to a, oh, she's so irritating. I just, I wish she wouldn't be so irritating or something. To stop collapsing people into simplistic understanding, and to go, what if every single person that I meet, the ones who are closest to me and the ones who are not, what if I wonder, what is there to learn? In what way does being with this person, meeting this person, loving this person, or even seeing this person once, might it be sweeping the path of leaves or snow before me before they go? And it's, as Maura Dooley says, it's really not obvious. It's often not obvious what somebody is teaching us by their presence in our lives. And as I'm just sort of working this through, and I'm saying this because I obviously didn't know I was going to say this, Lizzie, this sort of holding the everyone goes, all of us go, we will lose everybody. And everybody could be a teacher. But we don't know what it is that we're learning from them unless we give ourselves the chance to wonder. Suddenly, as I'm saying this, I can feel myself waking up with a kind of radical amazement at being here, where the people around me stop being ordinary, stop being like objects, and start being something, some great mystery, but also some great gift, even the ones that I'm angry with, upset with, confused by, as well as the ones that I am inspired by, amazed by, clarified by. So that's where I'm beginning in response to Maura's words, and it really does feel like a bunch of consolation, actually, to start to hold people that way.
That's such a great couple of threads you've got there, Justin, and I'm just feeling so strongly that there's a big difference to being. So when we say we love someone, we can mean a whole load of different things. And in this moment, one of the distinctions about that for me is sometimes when I say I love someone, I mean, I need you and I'm attached to you and you do something for me that makes it okay for me to be here or something. Like you being here gives me confidence or gives me a way of standing up in the world, and all that, how beautiful that could be for me from another person. But what if loving someone includes all of that, being attached and needing things and wanting things and being dependent on someone and all of those things? What if a deeper piece of it to access is how, if I love you, how well am I receiving you? How well am I seeing you, that you might be my way I learn? And that you get to give your gifts in the world because I'm receiving them. So the giver and receiver are inextricably linked, and that the gifts that you have, that I have to see that you have in order to receive them, maybe that's a way that I could really love you. And then I could do this thing that you were saying, which is to articulate what it is that I've learned by being in this life together with you. And you were saying, Justin, that we've both been in family loss scenarios, and this act of writing a eulogy has been so present to me in the last weeks. And in a way, this is what that is. And it's hard work. It's hard work to sit and to feel and to remember and to reflect, because it's not made of our habitual ongoing taking for grantedness that we're so often in. And I can already feel it. Like when you were speaking, I was thinking, oh gosh, yes, okay, I could reflect on what my nephew has shown me as to how to live, what my dad, what my grandparents, what, like, all kinds of people close in I was thinking about. And in order to do that work is a particular kind of labor that I know I would avoid unless I had to do it, until this conversation maybe, which is an invitation to say, I could do that and I want to do that. And it matters that I do that, because in the reflection of that, maybe I could get to see these ones and receive them ever more clearly. But it's something that is strangely seems to only happen when people die, which is not necessarily what's supposed to happen or indeed should happen. In order for us to live well, we could be reflecting and receiving and seeing and having heartfelt, reflective practice that allows us to love more clearly, because we see more clearly and we receive more clearly. And I can feel that it's hard and beautiful and needed. So I can feel an intention being born in me of like, oh, yes, I can sit down and write a list of all the people that have really taught me things in life. And that's not, by the way, all the people I love the most dearly and closely. It could be lessons I've learned in ways that are not pretty, of course. But that would be an amazing reflective practice. And I'm really feeling invited and compelled to relate in that way in my own reflective practice and my own journaling and writing, so that I could really express the heart of things.
I had so many thoughts and feelings moving through me as you were talking, Lizzie. And one of the thoughts was how easy it is to reduce other people to a kind of usefulness, sense of usefulness to us. Like, you're useful to me, Lizzie, because you make me feel good, or because I have good conversations with you, or because you remind me of this and that, or you're not useful to me because you annoy me, or I get frustrated with you, or whatever, to sort of collapse people down into a kind of some kind of surface, like, do you fit me or not? I think it's easy to do that in life. It is a kind of objectification of people. And then, as what I could feel in the underneath, well, you were very explicit about it, but you were pointing towards an underneath, which is, let's start with the people we love and admire and cherish, that beyond the surface way that we love and admire, that we like the way that it fits us, how I get delighted by being with you, for example. Beyond and beneath that, there's something much, much deeper going on all the time. And I think more I do these questions, if I were just to sit with you and go, how to wonder to myself, because I'm not sure I can ask this of you, actually, because you won't know the answer to the question. How are you showing me a way, Lizzie? Not your way, not so that I have to copy you, but what are you up to in every gesture and every move? What are the deep qualities and gifts and insights and kinds of wisdom and ways of orienting to life that are uniquely yours and are different from mine, and therefore they are for me to benefit from and to learn from and to take in and to widen myself from? This way that I could say, Lizzie, I mean, it could be you, it could be anyone, of course, who must say, you show me the way, but not your way. So what is that? What is the way in which being in relationship with you helps me and shows me how to find my own way and what to say? And what way are you part of sweeping the path of leaves or snow while you're here and while I know you? And that question, like you said, with writing a eulogy, there's one kind of eulogy, which is kind of, here's the person's life. And sometimes that's very important. They were born here and they lived here and they loved this but the deeper question of what what my way of talking about what they were teaching in all of their acts, in all of their gestures, I think is such a wonderful question to ask about someone who's died. But as you're saying, it's also important to ask about someone who's alive, and the person can't answer it. The person can't answer it for themselves because it has something to do with, it's easiest for me to talk about Eulogy because it's a real, like the way that Lizzie shows up in my life is where the answer, my way of answering that question lies. To wonder, then for me to wonder, what have I learned exactly? And like we've been saying, it's not just the people we love and cherish. I mean, very often it's also the people we find most difficult at teaching us something. And sometimes the reason we find them difficult is because what we find difficult about them is actually something about us. You know, when sometimes it's actions that people take, but sometimes if find somebody very frustrating or exasperating or I judge them in particular ways, really what I'm doing is I'm projecting out something that's inside me that I don't really want to see onto them. And so the most difficult people can be teaching us how to clear the path as well, how to clear the path of leaves and snow, like where to begin to look in our difficulty. So I'm thinking about, you pointed to it, this is not a new thought. I think I'm just saying back to you something that was directly implied by what you said, which is there's a kind of practice here that we could take up, which is to ask Maura Dooley's question for ourselves, of everybody. How is this person showing me the way, not their way, but how to find my own? How are they sweeping the path of leaves or snow, or showing me how to sweep the path of leaves or snow? What a thing it is to ask that. And it's a way of honoring and remembering the dead, but it's also a way of honoring and remembering those who are in life. And then I'm going to venture another thing, which is, what is it then to tell the person, this is what I'm learning from being with you, which is so different from you look lovely today, or I like your hat, or thanks for the cup of tea, or I like being in your company. It's a whole other kind of conversation to say to a person, this is what I'm learning from being with you. This is what is happening from being in your presence. I feel very excited about doing this, about what a gift. So whether I bring it to the other person, I may not bring it to the other person, but if I do, I think that there's something there. Because I realize, Lizzie, if I just now bring attention to myself, I think often I don't know what I'm teaching. I often don't know what people are learning from my presence. And probably a lot of it is not at all what I intend. It's something else. And that's a way of dignifying people and ourselves way beyond the kind of surface appearance of like, not like, welcome, not welcome, you're helpful, not helpful to me, you make me feel good, you irritate me. It's something much bigger. And maybe that's what Maura Dooley is pointing at the end, where she says, what is there to learn, to love, to speak up and to hold steady? It seems to me she might be pointing there.
Feeling the kind of, I don't know how to say this, like the general world social importance of being this way, of relating this way, of seeing one another beyond the shallowness that we normally see each other with, and how many awful consequences there are to not seeing one another properly, not seeing to the heart, not asking questions, not being curious, not being someone who wants to receive other human beings, but being somebody who wants to tear them down or judge them or be better than them or more right than they are, or belittle them or something. There's all kinds of ways that we can relate that are just not going to make the world a place where we can all be here together well. And when we talk about this, Justin, I can't help this part arising in me that feels I don't know, like an activist or something. You know, that this last line, as you're saying, is speaking up. You know, we're speaking up here for relationship. We're speaking up for receiving one another on deeper levels than is normally present in our usual institutions that we run around in and do things in. This isn't normally what's happening. And so I'm seeing our conversations, Justin, more and more as a, I don't know, like a very marginal in some ways, but very hopeful act that suggests that there are deeper, more connecting ways that we can live as human beings that enable the world to be a more curious place, a more mysterious place, a place that's based on receiving one another and wondering about one another and the big, big, vast pieces of life that each human being is. How can we get there to asking questions that are deeper than the ones we'd already ordinarily ask when we meet people? And this whole thing of what am I learning from you about how I could be is also a way of taking responsibility for this life too, because it could be a lesson that's coming to me in a really difficult way. But if I ask myself, well, what is this, by you being the way that you're being, what is it teaching me? I'm less likely to just come back with the stuff that you're giving me. I'm more likely to reflect and go, okay, well, this is teaching me that I don't really want to be that way. There's another way to be. I wonder what that way could be, given that I don't want to do the same thing back again. I want to be different. And so I'm feeling strongly about us doing this, us doing Turning Towards Life Live, us having these conversations, reflecting the practice we have of finding our sources, looking at the world to see what there is to receive from it that we might include in this conversation, seeking out the thinkers, the feelers, the ones who express themselves like Mora has in this beautiful poem, and amplifying that, having that be more in the world than it was already. Maybe because we say it here, maybe some people who are listening don't know Mora's poem already and they might know it now. And that piece of expression gets to have more of a life in the world because we're processing it and talking about it. And how do we do more of that, all of us? And, you know, we say, Justin, that these sources can be in anyone's hands to do this practice of listening to one another. And even this act of listening to one another fully and receiving what each other says is a thing that happens very rarely in the world, really. And that's part of the feedback that we've been receiving from Turning Towards Life Live, Justin, is that the ones who come and be in the space with us are grateful for the pace of the slowing down and really feeling listened to, but also the gift of actually listening to another person. I think so much of life has us forget what it's like to truly receive. And the receiving of someone is a wonderful, wonderful experience. To sit and be a receiver of another person's life, another person's story, another person's view, and really receive is not something we get much permission for. And we also don't get much permission to just speak and be heard. So that container that we're making for that listening and receiving to happen feels vital, really vital for life. And I'm really grateful to this poem for you, Justin, as well, bringing this poem. And also, I think the convergence of death being around us and also some things happening in the world recently in the UK where I've felt really desperate as to what on earth is happening in the world that people could feel so alienated and so alone. And how do we be part of the movement that says, no, we're going to be loving and curious in our questioning and wondering and keep standing for that ever more than we have before even.
A parting thought, Lizzie, in addition to all of that, when you talk about listening, being curious about another person, and I know that this is implied in what you're saying, but I want to want to bring it out very strongly. There's the way that we listen to what another person says, but then there's the way of listening that is really invited by Maura Dooley, which is, what is this person teaching me by their being in the world? Which is not the same exactly as the something that they're saying. And I'm thinking, for example, in remembering people who have died, when we remember someone who we think of as having been very stubborn, and sometimes someone's stubbornness might have caused us difficulty or caused them difficulty. But when we look more deeply, we see that they're also a person who somehow was finding a way to hold on to something very important that was cherished and not to be trampled on. And that their stubbornness was a way of preserving something that mattered. And we can start to ask the question, well, how might I stand for and preserve that which matters and not let it be trampled on in my life? Now, it may not be their way, but there may be a way in which even that which we found that we most wanted to turn away from in another person is a way into the something that you're saying. And so I want to sort of name that our listening to one another and our curiosity with one another is also sometimes may show up as a kind of, oh, isn't that lovely to hear you say that? And sometimes might show up as a kind of wrestling with or a wrangling with. And I find that very exciting. Like, what is it to be with one another and to wrestle with the gifts that are underneath the surface presentations of everything, like the deep human, the sort of sacred gifts of being a person. And so my parting thought is also just to share something that I think we may have talked about before, but seems appropriate in this time when we are both, and many other people who are listening to us will be missing someone or grieving someone or have lost someone or be about to lose someone. That I learnt when our friend Christy died about 13 years ago, Lizzie, very young and very unexpectedly. And I learnt at the time from someone whose work's been important in both of our lives in various ways, Norman Fisher, who said, the thing to do when someone dies is, and you're missing them and you want to remember them, is find a quality of theirs. Find something that is of theirs that you could include inside you and you could live by for a while as a way of remembering them. So find this person's commitment to preserve that which should not be trampled on. Find this person's courage or their creativity or their love or their sensitivity. And those things may be things that occurred to you as gifts, or they may be things that were troublesome to them and to you in their life. But either way, they are this underneath sacredness of being a person that we could be listening for, the very something that gets missed when we treat one another as irritations or objects or something that's useful to me or not. So I sort of want to invite that from both of us as we begin to move towards a close, but from everyone. Say, what is it to find and carry a quality that shone out in someone else? And then, as I think Maura Dooley is inviting us to do, is to say, what happens if I hold this inside me and live it as a way of sweeping the path of leaves or snow for myself and other people? So I want to say thank you to you, Lizzie, for being someone who is such an embodiment of hope and possibility in the world, that we keep on doing this. You keep on inviting me and all of us into talking and listening and being curious and talking to one another. And I want to echo your invitation to everyone. Come and join us for Turning Towards Life Live. September the 16th, we begin. Turning Towards Life is the place to find us. Contact us if you've got questions. And whether or not you join us for that, we hope to be back here as usual for another source and another conversation this time next week. Thank you, everyone.
Justin.
Bye-bye.
Bye.